Alright guys, here's the second video on exponential or exponent rules. Here I have a power to a power. So this is different than when we had x squared times x to the third. This is x squared all to the third power. Okay. If we have a power to a power, so that's what we call this, we multiply the exponents. So instead of adding 2 and 3, we need to multiply 2 and 3. So 2 times 3 would then give me x to the 6. And I'll show you why that is in a minute. Now here we have a negative exponent. Now this is one that kind of confuses people, but I want you to think of x to the negative second as x to the negative second over 1. Anytime we have a negative exponent, that whole thing goes to the other side of the fraction line. So in this case, x to the negative second is on top, so it's going to go to the bottom, and what that's going to become is 1 over x to the second. So one way to say this is if you have a negative exponent, it just reciprocates or goes to the other side. Okay, we flip it, so to speak. So another example, if I had 1 over, let's say x to the negative first. Okay, so notice I have a negative exponent, so all we have to do is move that to the other side and make it x to the first. Okay, so notice I just moved it up here and made that exponent positive. So, and I'm going to show you why this works. So first I'm going to show why this works here. So think about what something to the third power means. It just means that I'm multiplying that thing by itself 3 times. So if I come over here and I think, well, I'm going to multiply x squared times itself 3 times. Now if you remember, we talked in the last video that if I multiply with the same base, I just add the exponents. So it'd be 2 plus 2, which is 4, plus 2, which is 6. Okay, so that's one way to think about it. I could write this all out as, well, we know x squared is x times x. Same thing here. And forgive my bad handwriting. Again, x squared here is here. So I have, here's x squared, and here's x squared. So there's how many x's? 6. Okay, so that's another way to think about the same problem. So again, if we have a power to a power or an exponent with an exponent, we just multiply them. And one way to think about this, I'm gonna erase this whole thing here real quick because I'm gonna have to get some room. So give me just a minute. I'm not gonna prove it to you, but I'm just gonna give you a nice example to kind of show you why this works. So just ignore this stuff over here. I'm gonna use a different color here as well. Let's try orange, that's fine. Okay, so I'm gonna think of what is 2 to the 4th power. And if you think of 2 to the 4th power, that's 2 times 2, which is 4, times 2, which is 8, times 2, which is 16. Okay, so then 2 to the 3rd. We're just gonna keep going down here. 2 to the 3rd is just 2 times 2, which is 4, times 2, which is 8. 2 squared is 4. 2 to the 1st power is just 2. And if you don't remember this is a nice time to remind everybody. And this is also a nice way to show you where 2 to the 0 comes from. So let's actually start here. If I think about this, how would I get from 16 to 8? To get from 16 to 8, I would just divide by 2. Okay, so 16 divided by 2 is 8. If I divide 8 by 2, I get 4. If I divide 4 by 2, I get 2. Now what happens if I divide 2 by 2? I get 1. So anything to the 0 power is 1. Well, let's imagine I just kept going. So let's say 2 to the negative 1st power. Well, again, I'm going to keep this pattern going. What's 1 divided by 2? Is it not just 1/2? And again, one way to think about that is if I was to put 2 to the negative 1st over 1 and then move this to the bottom, I get 1/2. And you can keep going with that. So 2 to the negative 2nd would be 1 over 4 because 1/2 divided by 2 is 1/4. And again, you can keep going with that. But just to kind of show you where that negative exponent comes from, basically it's the same thing as these except flipped. So 2 to the 1st is 2. 2 to the negative 1st is just flip 2 to 1/2. Okay, so if you have any more questions, please let me know in class, and I hope this video was helpful.